The phone rang at Frank Sinatra's Palm Springs mansion at 2:47 a.m. on a cold December night in 1987. Frank, now 72 years old, reached for the receiver with a trembling hand. He hadn't heard that voice in 8 long years. 8 years of silence. 8 years of regret. "Frank, it's Dean." The voice was weak, broken, nothing like the smooth crooner who once commanded stages alongside him. Frank sat up in bed, his heart pounding against his ribs like a drum. "I need you to know something," Dean Martin whispered, his words cutting through the darkness like a knife. 6 words that would change everything. 6 words that would bring 2 legends back together before it was too late. What did Dean say that night? And why had these 2 best friends, brothers in everything but blood, not spoken for 8 years? If you want to discover the truth about Hollywood's greatest friendship and its most painful silence, hit that subscribe button and keep watching. Drop a comment below telling us about a friendship you wish you could repair. The golden years. Las Vegas, 1960. The Rat Pack was at its peak. Frank Sinatra, Dean Martin, Sammy Davis Jr., Peter Lawford, and Joey Bishop owned the night. The Sands Hotel was their kingdom, and they ruled it like kings. Dean and Frank were more than just friends. They were brothers. Dean, the laid-back Italian with the easy smile and the voice like velvet, perfectly balanced Frank's intensity and fire. On stage, they were magic. Off stage, they were inseparable. They filmed Ocean's 11 together during the day and performed sold-out shows at night. They drank, they laughed, they lived life like tomorrow might never come. Frank called Dean Dag, short for Dago, a nickname only a true friend could use. Dean called Frank Charlie and could make him laugh harder than anyone else on earth. "Dean's not just my partner," Frank once told a reporter in 1962. "He's the only guy who really gets me. When I'm with Dean, I don't have to be Frank Sinatra. I can just be Frank." Their families vacationed together. Frank was godfather to one of Dean's children. They shared secrets, dreams, and a bond that seemed unbreakable. For 2 decades, they were the definition of friendship, the kind of connection that people dream about but rarely find. But beneath the laughter and the lights, something was building. Something neither of them saw coming. The first cracks. By the late 1970s, things began to change. Frank was still pushing hard, always working, always performing, always demanding perfection from everyone around him. Dean, approaching his 60s, wanted to slow down. He'd been performing since he was a teenager, and the endless cycle of shows, recordings, and appearances was wearing him down. "I'm tired, Pally," Dean told a close friend. "I've been singing the same songs for 40 years. Maybe it's time to just rest." But Frank didn't understand rest. Frank Sinatra was a machine, driven by demons that Dean couldn't see and couldn't share. Frank needed the stage, the applause, the constant motion. Without it, he felt lost. The tension started small. Dean would skip a rehearsal. Frank would get angry. Dean would want to leave Vegas early. Frank would take it personally. Small disagreements became bigger arguments. The easy friendship that had sustained them for 20 years began to feel like work. The Together Again tour in 1988, someone had a brilliant idea. Reunite the Rat Pack for one final tour. Frank Sinatra, Dean Martin, and Sammy Davis Jr. would perform together again. The Together Again tour was announced, and tickets sold out in hours. America was ready to see their heroes one more time. But there was a problem. Dean didn't want to do it. "I'm 70 years old," Dean told his manager. "I'm retired. Why do I need to go back on the road?" Frank pushed anyway. He called Dean personally. "Come on, Dag. One last run. For old time's sake. For the fans who love us." Dean, against his better judgment, agreed. He did it for Frank. He did it for their friendship. But his heart wasn't in it. The tour from hell. The tour started in March 1988, and from the first show, everyone could see something was wrong. Dean looked tired, older than his years. His voice, once so effortless, struggled to hit the notes. He forgot lyrics. He seemed disoriented on stage. Frank, watching from the wings, felt frustration boiling inside him. This was supposed to be their triumph, their final victory lap together. But Dean was ruining it. After the third show, Frank confronted him. "What's wrong with you? You're embarrassing us out there." Dean's eyes flashed with rare anger. "Embarrassing you? Frank, I didn't want to do this tour in the first place. I'm here because you pushed me into it." "Pushed you?" Frank's voice rose. "I gave you an opportunity to be relevant again. Without me, you'd be sitting in that house alone, forgotten." The words hung in the air like poison. Dean stared at his friend, his brother, with an expression Frank had never seen before. It was hurt, deep, and cutting. "You know what, Frank?" Dean said quietly. "I think I'm done. Done with this tour. Done with pretending everything's fine when it's not." "If you walk out on me," Frank warned, "don't bother calling. I mean it, Dean. You leave this tour, and we're finished." Dean Martin walked off that tour after just 5 shows. He packed his bags, got on a plane, and went home to Los Angeles. He never performed in public again. And true to his word, Frank Sinatra stopped calling, stopped visiting, stopped acknowledging that Dean Martin even existed. ### 8 years of silence. The silence that followed was deafening. In Hollywood, everyone knew about the falling out. Friends tried to mediate, tried to bring them back together. Barbara Sinatra, Frank's wife, begged him to reach out. Dean's children called Frank, hoping he would visit. Frank refused. "He walked out on me," Frank would say, his jaw set in that familiar stubborn line. "If he wants to apologize, he knows where to find me." But Dean was dealing with something far worse than a broken friendship. In 1987, his son, Dean Paul Martin, a 35-year-old Air Force pilot, died when his F-4 Phantom jet crashed into a mountain during a training mission. Dean was destroyed. Friends said he aged 10 years overnight. The light went out of his eyes. He became a ghost, wandering through his Beverly Hills mansion, staring at photos of his boy, unable to understand why God would take his son. Everyone expected Frank to call, to show up, to be the friend he'd always been. Dean's daughter Deanna later recalled, "Dad would sit by the phone sometimes. I think he was waiting for Frank. Just waiting." But Frank didn't call. Pride, hurt, stubbornness, whatever it was, Frank Sinatra stayed silent while his best friend drowned in grief. For 8 years, 2 men who had shared everything shared nothing but mutual silence and regret that grew heavier with each passing day. The breaking point: December 1995. Dean Martin was now 78 years old, and his health was failing. He'd been diagnosed with lung cancer. The doctors said he didn't have much time, maybe a few months, maybe less. Dean sat in his darkened study, looking at old photographs, pictures of him and Frank in their prime, on stage at the Sands, laughing at some long-forgotten joke. Young, strong, immortal. He picked up the phone several times that night, put it down, picked it up again. 8 years was a long time to be angry. 8 years was a long time to be proud. And Dean Martin didn't have 8 years left. At 2:47 a.m., he finally dialed the number he'd memorized decades ago. The phone rang once, twice, 3 times. Then Frank's voice, rough with sleep, "Hello. Frank, it's Dean." There was a long pause. Dean could hear his old friend breathing on the other end of the line. Could hear the weight of 8 years in that silence. "I know I shouldn't call this late," Dean continued, his voice barely above a whisper. "But I needed to talk to you. I needed to tell you something." "What is it, Dag?" Frank's voice had softened. Just hearing that old nickname made Dean's eyes well with tears. Dean took a deep breath. This was it. The moment that would either repair everything or end it forever. He spoke 6 words. 6 simple words that contained everything he needed to say. Asterisk, "I should have been there, Frank." Asterisk, the words hung in the darkness between them. Dean continued, "When you needed me on that tour, when you needed your friend, I walked away. I was tired and selfish, and I hurt you. And I'm sorry, Frank. I'm so damn sorry." Frank Sinatra, the man who could command a room with just his presence, the man who never showed weakness, broke down and cried. "No, Dean. No. I should have been there for you. When Dean Paul died. God, Dag, I should have been there. I let pride and stubbornness keep me from being there when you needed me most. I'm the one who's sorry. The reunion 2 days later. Frank Sinatra's car pulled up to Dean Martin's Beverly Hills home. Frank, now 80 years old, walked slowly up the familiar path. His hands shook as he rang the doorbell. Dean opened the door himself. The two men stood there, looking at each other, really looking, for the first time in 8 years. They were old now, weathered by time and regret. But in each other's eyes, they saw the young men who'd conquered Vegas together. They didn't say anything at first. They just embraced. Two old friends, holding each other up, crying on each other's shoulders like children. I missed you, Dag, Frank whispered. I missed you too, Charlie, Dean replied. They spent the next several hours together, talking, laughing, remembering. Frank told Dean about his recent tour, his grandchildren, his life. Dean talked about his health, his memories, his regrets. You know what's funny? Dean said, his voice weak but his smile genuine. We wasted 8 years being mad at each other. 8 years we could have spent together. And for what? Because I was too tired to do a few more shows. Frank shook his head. It wasn't about the shows, Dag. It never was. I was scared. Scared of getting old, scared of slowing down, scared of being forgotten. And when you wanted to stop, it felt like you were leaving me behind. I wasn't leaving you, Frank. I was just tired. I know that now, Frank said, taking his friend's hand. I know that now. The final days Frank visited Dean every week for the next few months. Sometimes they would watch old movies together. Sometimes they'd just sit in comfortable silence, the way only old friends can. Barbara Sinatra later recalled, Frank came alive again during those visits. He smiled more, laughed more. It was like getting a piece of the old Frank back. Dean's daughter Deanna said, those last months with Frank meant everything to Dad. He'd been so lonely for so long. Having his friend back, it gave him peace. On Christmas Day 1995, Frank brought presents for Dean and his family. They watched old Rat Pack footage together, laughing at jokes they'd made 35 years earlier. We were something, weren't we? Dean said, his eyes fixed on the screen showing two young men in their prime. We were everything, Dag, Frank replied. We were everything. The last goodbye. Dean Martin died on December 25, 1995, Christmas morning, just a few months after that late-night phone call. He was 78 years old. Frank Sinatra was devastated. But he told Barbara, at least we had those last few months. At least I got to tell him. At least he knew. At Dean's funeral, Frank sat in the front row, tears streaming down his face. He'd lost his best friend twice, once to pride and stubbornness, and now to death. But he'd also found him again, even if only for a brief time. Dean taught me something in those final months, Frank told a close friend. He taught me that life's too short to hold grudges, too short to let pride destroy the things that matter. We wasted 8 years being angry when we could have been together. 8 years I can never get back. The universal truth. The story of Frank Sinatra and Dean Martin is more than just Hollywood history. It's a mirror that reflects something we all struggle with: the cost of pride, the weight of unspoken apologies, and the precious nature of time. How many of us have someone in our lives we're not speaking to? A friend, a family member, someone we once loved but hurt or who hurt us. How many of us are waiting for them to apologize first, to make the first move, to admit they were wrong? Frank and Dean lost 8 years. 8 years of friendship, laughter, and love because neither wanted to be the first to reach out. Because both were too proud to admit they were wrong. Dean's 6 words, I should have been there, Frank, weren't just an apology. They were a gift. They were the gift of humility, of love, of recognizing that relationships matter more than pride. Frank Sinatra died on May 14, 1998, less than 3 years after Dean. Those who were close to him said he was never quite the same after Dean's death. He'd lost his anchor, his balance, the one person who truly understood him. But he also gained something precious in those final months: peace. The peace that comes from forgiveness, from reconciliation, from saying the things that need to be said before it's too late. Your turn. Here's the lesson their story teaches us. Don't wait 8 years. Don't wait 8 months. Don't wait 8 days. If there's someone you need to call them tonight. If there's an apology you need to make it tomorrow. If there's a friendship that's broken, be the one to fix it. Pride is cold comfort when you're sitting alone, looking at old photographs, wishing you could hear that voice one more time. Stubbornness means nothing when the person you're not speaking to is gone, and all you have left is regret. Dean and Frank found their way back to each other, but just barely. They got lucky. They got those few precious months before it was too late. You might not be that lucky. The person you're not speaking to might not have a few more months. None of us know how much time we have. So be brave. Be humble. Be the bigger person. Pick up the phone. Send the text. Write the letter. Show up at the door. Say the words that need to be said. I'm sorry. I miss you. I should have been there. Because in the end, that's all that matters. Not who was right. Not who was wrong. Just that you loved each other. And that love deserves to be honored while you still can. Frank Sinatra and Dean Martin taught us that the greatest songs aren't always sung on stage. Sometimes the greatest songs are the ones whispered in the darkness, in the quiet moments when pride falls away and truth remains. I love you. I'm sorry. Come back to me if this story touched your heart. If it made you think about someone you need to call, hit that like button and subscribe to our channel. Share this video with someone who needs to hear it. And most importantly, don't wait. Don't let 8 years become forever. Tell us in the comments. Is there someone you need to reach out to? What's stopping you? Your story might inspire someone else to take that brave step. Remember, it's never too late for 6 words that can change everything. In the end, we only regret the chances we didn't take, the relationships we were too afraid to repair, and the love we didn't express when we had the chance. A lesson from Frank and Dean.